Yeah, you can see, can't you? So the sensor flashes every time the magnet goes past it, and this just enables me to make sure that I've got it in the right place. So that seems pretty good there actually, it seems happy with that. So what I can do now, there's a little grub screw that's got to go into the plastic to hold it all in position. So now I know that that's working, I can sort that out, so I'll do that next. And before I take it off, I'm going to mark it so I know how far out it needs to be. There we go. Right, the next step is a whole load of cable tying to do. Some of it will probably have to be undone and redone, but I've got to get it into a state where I can actually do a proper test ride on it now. And that will be jolly exciting. We're probably going to have some slack cable, the question is where. We've also got a whole load of cables the wrong way around, so if we've switched off, let's just unplug and do that one again. Now you might remember I said I put the brake cut-off switch going forward. That does mean unfortunately that the cable isn't long enough to be tethered with the others, which isn't ideal. I'll probably get an extension. For now I'm just going to leave it unclipped to the frame, but that's not really ideal, so I think I'm going to get an extension for that one. I think you've got all the cables right, and then you realise that you've got one on top of the others where you actually wanted it underneath, etc, etc, which is why I keep undoing these and doing them up again. I'm actually making sure I've got a little rain loop on that one. What that means is that you don't provide a track for water to drip downwards into the connector, so it has to drip down and then it will come off at the low point before the cable then rises again to go into the connector. So making some good progress. Just going through a sort of load of safety checks now really, because what you've got to be particularly careful on this trike is that the cables and the control lines, or control cables and everything, don't pinch going from complete lock to lock. So there's got to be enough slack, but not so much slack that it presents a hazard. Sometimes easier said than done, but it's okay. Just got to take your time and have plenty of cable ties for the times when you didn't take your time. I've unplugged all of this numerous times and put it back together, and I'm sure there's plenty more to come. I'm going to end up with some extra cable. I'm not going to go as far as shortening the harness, but I will need somewhere to put all this cable. No, not there, not there. That's going to be a case of just trying it out, I think. See, you can tell those two really want to go. Do they want to go over that steering bar or under it? I think they probably want to go under it and down through that cable tie there. Okay, just a quick update on where we are with the trike so far. So from back to front, new chain and rear cassette installed, Stony Archer 3-speed hub set up again, got the speed sensor magnet there on the back wheel, and you can see the speed sensor itself just in there. Batteries installed with the cable extended going through that hole in the frame there. Cables then swap over to the other side. Under the seat. Coming out here. Now this is a bit of a mess at the moment. It's not quite finished off. You remember I said that the cable harness wasn't quite long enough to take the gear shift selector and or gear shift sensor, excuse me, which is just there, and the cables for both brake cut-off switches. So we've got this one here, which is where the shift sensor was supposed to plug in, but there wasn't enough length for that. So I plugged this one in here, but that's not ideal. It's going to get in the way a little bit. Ideally, it'd be extended. So I now have the extension cable. So I'll go ahead and fit that now. See the chargers on the seat there. I've just been charging the battery a little bit. The next thing to do is this little one down here, which is a connector for a light. This gives out an output of 6 volts. You can switch it on and off on the display by pressing and holding the plus button. This bike has got some homemade lights, and don't be deceived by the fact that they're homemade. They are actually very good, really bright, and I'll show you what I mean by that hopefully when they're wider. They run off 5 volts, so they're designed to run off a USB battery pack. I think they're going to be fine on 6. I've got to do a bit of rewiring to the little computer that controls them, the DigiSpark, which controls them, but I think they're going to be okay. So the next jobs, I guess, are to connect this up, sort the wiring out for the lights, tidy it up a bit more, cable tie it in place. We've got to waterproof that power connector, which I haven't done yet, and then program the controller appropriately so that it doesn't completely chew up the 3-speed hub when we put the power through it. So turn it down basically so it starts really slowly with low torque, and then it's going to be time for a test drive. Test ride. So here it is. Panniers back on, cable's tied up pretty well, lights working. I say cable's tied up pretty well. This whole area here doesn't look particularly neat, but it does need a bit of play in it to cope with the movement when you steer. Can't steer it very well with one hand. So I might tidy that up a bit more, but for now it's okay. Okay, so I'll just turn the lights off. I've just been out for a quick ride on this. I've got to say it's really good. I've set it so it's got the full 9 levels of assist. I found 4 was pretty reasonable, but of course it all depends on how 4 is set up. So I've done some programming of this, which you may know voids the warranty, but because this has got a 3-speed hub on the back, it's really important to me to lower the startup current, the startup torque as much as possible, otherwise it'll knacker the hub. So I accept that I've voided the warranty. Also set things like the way the throttle ramps up, well, how long the motor carries on going after you've stopped pedalling, all that sort of thing. So right now I'm going to go out for a bit of a longer ride on this because it's good fun. Here we are a few weeks later. The ride straight after I shot the last bit of video didn't quite happen, so if the bike's looking even muckier than it was in that bit, then you know why. Come to a local trail to give this a go. I've had a bit more of a ride around on it in the last few days and I'm really pleased with it. I'll just take you through the controls before we start. So this bike has got a Sturmey Archer or equivalent Sunrace 3-speed internal gear hub. So that's controlled on this side. This side is the derailleur, as you'd expect. On here, the Bafang unit. It's that to switch it on. These two to cycle up and down through the power levels, and then we can go to the display, the odometer, average speed, maximum speed, back to there. So with this drive unit there's really two modes of applying electric power to it. You can either use the thumb throttle, and you can do that from a standing start, which we'll do in a minute. I can see there's just some people coming up in front of me at the moment, so I won't do it yet. Or you can start pedalling, and after it senses that you've been pedalling for a little while, it then kicks in with the power. Reasons why that's a good idea is if you accidentally catch one of the pedals while you're manoeuvring the bike, you don't want it to suddenly start kicking in with electric power and firing you off into the distance, or more likely firing the bike into your leg, because that would hurt. So we'll get riding, move a little bit further away from any noise, and then I'll talk you through it a little bit more. Hopefully you can hear me over the wind noise. I'm on the GoPro now, so the microphone isn't quite as good, but hopefully you can still hear me. Let's get going. Okay, so we're at a standstill now. I'll try and make sure that the internal gear hub at the back is in the lowest ratio. That's just because I want to prolong its life as much as possible. You'll have heard me mention earlier about having the power ramp up very slowly on this, and that's also to preserve the life of that. So from a standing start, just make sure the brake is off. We can either just push this to start off, like that, or obviously I can just start pedaling, and after probably just there, that's when it started kicking in. So I wasn't counting, but 2 or 3 rotations of the crank and it starts kicking in. Chosen a path with a lot of horse shit, which is a bit of a shame. And also not at all friendly for trikes. Great big stone in the middle of the road. I usually start this trail further along. Anyway, now we get to find out how heavy the trike is with electric power. Not too bad. So most of the time you start pedaling, power kicks in, you can then adjust the power or the level of assistance on the fly. So for me at 3 or 4 it's really starting to feel pretty easy, and you know, makes quite light work of the pedaling. Your mileage may vary obviously depending on how much assistance you need or want. One thing I haven't worked out is the maximum range with this battery and motor combination. It's quite a difficult thing to quantify because it depends so much on how much power you use and how much you just want to we'll go this way. Depends on how much power you use, how much you want to do actual cycling, and how much you just want to cruise along using the thumb throttle. It would be more usual to have a thumb throttle on the right hand side if you're used to a quad or a motorbike, I guess. But on the right hand side of this bike we have the mirror. The owner's chosen to have a particularly large mirror here. That's because we drive on the left in the UK, and so adding all this to that side would just make it too crowded, really. So if you've been cycling a bit and you just fancy a bit of a rest, you're cruising along, just get the thumb on there. Not cycling helps you to keep your mouth, not smoke too soon, keep your mouth closed when you're going through a cloud of flies. You may find yourself wondering what the maximum speed is of this machine. That's not something I'm going to commit to on camera, but it's good fun, let's say that. You'll remember it's got a sensor on the gear cable for the derailleur, so that when you shift while it's under power, it senses the cable moving and it cuts the power to prolong the life of the chain and the shift mechanism. It doesn't have that for the internal gear hub, but you're supposed to stop pedalling to change those anyway. So that's generally not an issue, because you get into the habit quite quickly of stopping pedalling to change that gear. Okay, so that brings this series on the electric conversion of this Ice Adventure 20 trike to a close. Thanks very much for watching. Hope it was helpful if you've got one of these, or if you're interested in getting one of these and doing a conversion on it yourself. I know I would say this because I did it, but I'm really pleased with how it's gone. So is the owner of this trike. It's enabled him to cycle much further within the energy that he has available. So it's enabled him to keep on enjoying cycling, basically, which is great. So far it's been pretty reliable. This lock nut here is needed tightening up. Apart from that, it's been really good. So it's not quite as slick and as neat a conversion as the Shimano step system that comes from Ice themselves, and I know that is a really nice system. All the cables are hidden, it's lovely, but this one is a lot cheaper. It can also be retrofitted to an older trike, and it's also a lot more flexible in terms of things like this, the power tweaking, that sort of thing. So the owner's really glad that he went for this rather than going for a whole new trike. And in the description of this video you'll see links to all the parts, bits and pieces I've used and that type of thing. Make sure you hit subscribe so you get notified when I publish more videos like this if you're into this sort of thing. For now, thanks very much for watching. Bye!